I received just one comment that is still in my memory. And the lady said, Fabrizio, the watch is beautiful, but it's not sexy at all.
That is so funny. I completely fail in the start of this interview with Fabrizio Buonamassa Stigliani, who is the chief watch designer at Bulgari. This is Watches and it's Watches and Failure. But it's more than that, of course. This episode is a hotly anticipated moment for me to actually really explore the life, the concepts, the creativity of one of the industry's leading designers. There is no question that Fabrizio's impact on Bulgari has completely changed the trajectory of the way we look at Bulgari watchmaking and the distinction it has from Bulgari jewelry, which is for so long the stone in the shoe of this mega luxury powerful brand was how do they gain watchmaking legitimacy? How do they gain watchmaking design singularity? How do they gain something recognizable for the house that can take the brand forward in watchmaking? In this episode of Watches and Design, you will find out because I sit down now for an opening gambit of failure, but a wonderful discussion with one of my favorite human beings in the industry, Mr. Fabrizio Buonamassa Stigliani. Welcome to Watches and with me, Andrew McUtchen.
You have to ask, first of all, to you, why I need this kind of object, why I'm drawing this kind of object, who have to use it, why they have to use it.
When do they use it?
Exactly. Which kind of way they have to use, they have to put the watch on which kind of way on the wrist.
Look, let's be honest. If you followed me on any of my platforms or even Time+Tide, you will know that I'm mildly obsessed with not just the, I suppose, products of Fabrizio Buonamassa Stigliani, but also the man's panache, his style, his way of being. I think the Italian is sprezzatura. Please don't mock me for that. But strangely enough, the one thing we talk about the most, which is watches and time, is the one thing we rarely have much of with each other. But that all changed in this opportunity. The scene is we are in a beautiful hotel on the shores of Lake Geneva. Fabrizio is looking just as stylish as Fabrizio always looks. There's a pocket square. There's a beautifully textured material to his tailored suit. His beard is immaculately groomed, which is, as a bearded man, I know this is no easy feat. He looks absolutely like he's walked out of the set of an Italian movie. He looks beautiful. And we begin in this conversation to dig more into the life journey that has led to these monumental successes. The Serpenti turbo gas, which was a design that started with a blank sheet of paper. The Octo Finissimo, which was the rocket that launched the men's watchmaking division for Bulgari into an entirely different level of recognition, of desirability, and of record-breaking watchmaking. My goal is that you will come out of this podcast, if not as warmly attached to Fabrizio as I am, at least a little more curious about this dynamic and incredibly talented artist who says, and my favorite quote from Fabrizio reads as such, "The products, the designs are nothing more than an excuse to make another sketch." So may you fall in love with the thing that underpins what you do, the way that Fabrizio has fallen in love with sketching, which is where all of the magic begins. So let the magic begin. This is Watches and with Fabrizio Buonamassa Stigliani. Let's go. Fabrizio, my friend, I think I can call you that now after so many years. We've done some cool stuff together. We've done falconing. We have done countless video interviews.
Yeah.
What's your memory of the falconing, by the way?
I think the first time that we met, it was in Tokyo. If I remember
Ginza.
well, Ginza. It was an interview on the Bulgari bar at the Ginza Tower. And after we made another fantastic video.
That was watches and whiskey.
There's watches and whiskey, yes, during our watch press day in Tokyo. And another memory that I have was the video that we made in Rome on the Spanish Step, talking about Roman heritage and Italian design and Bulgari DNA, something like that. So
we watched the sunset.
Yeah, exactly. It was a good memory.
That was special. My favorite memory with you is definitely the falconing.
Yeah.
Because the guy called his bird chicken.
Yeah.
It was a falcon, but he was saying chicken, chicken. And in the video, when I say chicken, everyone thinks that I'm calling the falcon a chicken. We've had some wonderful times. But the one thing that we have never done is anything even vaguely autobiographical. So there's a lot that I don't know about you, and I want to learn that today.
It's going to be a long discussion.
Because I want to know about the 5 watches that tell your life.
Back in times, 5 watches is not so easy, honestly, because I love watches. Since my childhood, I start to have a look about the watches in my family, my father watches, my grandfather watches. And I think, honestly, I have no idea about my first watches. It was watches from one of my uncles, but honestly, I have no memories. I remember very well the watch of my father, an Omega Speedmaster Mark II. So my father was in love with all the space adventures. It was the moment when I was a child. I was born in the 71. Mm-hmm. The space, the moon, it was the right moment. So my father was in love with the Omega Speedmaster Mark II. The other memory that I have is one of the watch of my grandfather, and it was a Seiko 5.
Wow.
Again, the moment of the quartz wave. So I have the Mark III, but now is with my brother. I have the watch of my grandfather, the Seiko 5. I don't have the other watches of my grandfather. The other 3 watches, let me say, that are very important for me are Bulgari watches. For sure.
I want to enjoy this moment before we get to Bulgari, because we have a good history of talking Bulgari. We don't have a history of talking anything else. So you are a connoisseur. I would say you appreciate other brands. It's very interesting to me that your father's watch was a Mark II Speedmaster, because this is dramatically different design. Can you talk to me about the contrast?
Honestly, I was in love for the graphical elements of the dials, because it was immediately very clear to read. The white hands, the white counters, the graphical elements of the counters, the matte black finishing of the dial. And I was in love for the case. It was very
beautiful
70s.
Case.
Very
cushion.
70s with the tachymetric scale integrated in the crystal sapphire. And the case was a piece of steel.
Chunk.
Exactly.
Heavy.
I say, what is this? This was the right moment. It was the 70 design. And maybe that's why I start to imagine shapes and I start to imagine object. I was in love with this not conventional shape, honestly.
How do you describe this shape? Because it's a little bit like a cushion case, I suppose, but it's also a little bit like a flying saucer. It has this wonderful shape.
Without lugs. The bracelet was without lugs, and the case is absolutely a piece of geometrical elements with this kind of finishing. It was a sun ray finishing around the case, without the bezel, without lugs, without crown holders. It was just a pure geometrical elements. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I don't know why. I was a kid, and it was a bit, let me say, not common in watchmaking industry, this kind of shapes, because even the first Speedmaster was with lugs, with applied bezel, with a different glass, with the integrated bracelet, more or less. But the Mark II was something totally different.
And what color? Because there were some funky colors too.
No, it was the black dial. Let me say the common one.
Yes.
But the case was a bit raw in terms of design. The back case, the detail of the crown, the push button, very simple. But the dial was very rich of details.
Yes. when I think of my father's watch, it's almost like a mythical, magical thing. Because when you're a little child, it's so big. Because the Speedmaster 2, Mark II, is so big as well.
Yeah.
Even for a man, it's big.
Thick.
Do you remember interacting with it as a child? Do you have any memories of trying to
I remember that I tried many, many times. And I remember very well that I look at the watch, start to have the watch on my hand, turn the watch on my hand, look at the case, look at the details of the back case, look at the detail of the bracelet. I remember me with this watch in my hand, that it was a huge watch because my hands were absolutely small. And look at the watch in each details, exactly in the same way today when I play with the Bulgari watches, turned around the watches to see the back case, to see the bracelet, to see the buckle. It was one of the first watch, let me say, it was a discover for me. Mm-hmm. And I say, what is this object? And my father always have on the wrist. And we talk about UFO, we talk about spaceships. It was a bit a link with this kind of universe for my father.
What sort of a child were you at that point? How would you describe your personality?
I spent a lot of time making sketches, mostly all the day, out of the school, all the afternoon. But I spend a lot of time too on the bicycles. We play with the other kids. So I was not, let me say, a sort of sketch nerd. It was a right balance in my life. It was never something that was a tough moment for me. But this was my way to live my childhood. Play with cars, play with watches, quartz watches, digital watches, with a lot of different things, and making sketches and sketches and sketches.
And describe the environment to me. Was this in some bucolic Italian small town, or where were you?
No, it was in Rome. I grew up. I was born in Naples, but I grew up in Rome, and it was, let me say, a common life. Nothing special in the 70s, in the 80s. So everything was maybe a little bit more fun, but maybe even because I was a kid. So it's difficult to say. Now is a different world.
Now, tell me, that's a wonderful breakdown of what makes the Speedmaster Mark II special. Seiko 5, what a classic. It's still every year.
I think it was the moment I discovered Seiko. I don't know, my grandfather had this watch. He had even other watches, but I never was in touch with the other watches of my grandfather. It was some chronographs from Eberhard or some other Swiss watches. But honestly, I don't have any memories about that, because he always was with this Seiko 5 on the wrist. And this is the watch.
Ooh,
another 70 design case integrated without lugs, with more or less the same bracelet of the Omega Speedmaster Mark II. It was, and it's still in good condition. It works. Sometimes I use it. It's just for the memories. And my grandfather was in love for two things. I always have seen him with this watch and with his Volkswagen Beetle Series 2. And I have a lot of memories of my childhood on the backseat of this Volkswagen Beetle Series 2. And he take care about the cars. He clean every week the amazing color, the amazing interior.
Of pride.
Yes, it was his own car. And in the 70s and the 80s, the Beetle was still a very iconic car. It was the beginning of this iconic history. But this watch was, honestly, I don't know why. It was the quartz era. It was the Japanese movement era. This Seiko 5 is not a quartz watch, but I think it was the Japanese wave, let me say.
It has such a smooth sweep of the seconds hand.
Yes, absolutely amazing.
So could you describe this watch in terms of the shape to our listeners?
I love the shapes. Maybe...
we need to look this up. We need to find a reference.
I think it's like a TV screen shape.
Yes.
The glass, it's an horizontal design, but it's not square, it's not an elliptical design. It's very smooth. The dial, the indexes are disposed in a very unusual way because you don't have just one long indexes, but you have a lot of small square elements. It's a date with a very well-made date windows, 2 hands with a small second hands, 5 logo applied on the dial, and even the Seiko logo is applied on the dial. And now I just noticed that it's a monochrome watch.
Yes, all silver.
Case, bracelet, and dial with exactly the same finishing. Maybe I have to say that this watch, it was back on my memory when I start to design the Octo Finissimo, or I designed this shape many, many times, honestly. I love this kind of shape with integrated lugs. All the watches of the 70s has integrated lugs, but this one, it's very unusual. It's difficult to say that it's a vertical or horizontal evolution of the shape. It's a bit a square watch with a very soft shape on the side.
Yes, it is definitely more rectangular, isn't it?
It's more rectangular, yes, with an amazing facet on the side. The side of the case is made with the 3 different facets, with a beautiful anglage, let me say. Mm-hmm. With the 3 big chamfer, screw-in back case with all the logos that still are readable.
And do you know what's interesting to me? I'm not sure you've even picked this up. Look at what's on your wrist.
Exactly. It's now, honestly, I notice just now that is exactly the same finishing of the Octo Finissimo S.
And it has the same color scheme of this monochromatic sort of very
This is very interesting because
steel.
We see a lot of different things during our life. As a designer, it's very important to see a lot of different things, and many, many things is part of your back, let me say, hard disk on your brain. And when you need something, my brain works in this way. When you need something, the image comes out or the emotion comes out, and I start to make sketches and I start to see something. So maybe this watch was in my brain. For sure it was in my brain. It was for sure inspired me.
The build quality in the hand is extraordinary.
Yeah.
You know, and I think if I'm not wrong, a watch like this in, let's just say, the early 70s or mid 70s even, would have been expensive. This is because we think now of Seiko and quartz technology as being a cheaper alternative to Swiss. But perhaps this was more of a design statement than a price point decision. He wouldn't have said, I could have a Rolex, I'll get a Seiko, it's cheaper. A watch like this would have been at the forefront of technology, and it probably would have been quite expensive.
Yeah, I think you are right. It was a crazy moment. In terms of design, it was a fantastic moment. The 70s, you have the opportunity to design a lot of different things, all what you have in mind, all what you want. And this is one of the expressions. I talk about 2 watches of the 70s, the Mark II and this Seiko 5 is more or less the same unconventional approach to the watchmaking industry, of watchmaking design. So very, very interesting approach. Maybe this is part of my DNA as an industrial designer. I grew up in the 70s, in the 80s. 80s and 70s are totally different in terms of aesthetics. Mm-hmm. But for sure, I was born in the 70s, so many inspiration come from this period of my life, for sure.
Does this conform to any of the design schools or design eras? Would you say this is, I mean, obviously it's not brutalist or anything obvious, but is there a design era that this fits into?
I can say that it's very well integrated. So it's a technical design, but not just cold execution of technical design. The case and the bracelet are very well integrated. You can see that we are talking about the 70s, about the shapes. It's a very horizontal shape for the glass. The TV screen glass, it's something that talk about 70s in a very, very unique way. But the case and the bracelet still today could be interesting. And I think that I make a lot of sketches with this kind of configuration about lugs and bracelet during my career.
Would this be considered a futuristic design?
I think so, yeah.
Well, look, that's a watch that you probably can't immediately picture. But I imagine that for watch number 1, we had this watch, the Seiko 5, and it is not the Seiko 5 that you're imagining with the crown at 4, like an NH35 movement. Yeah. This is a very much of its time 70s model. We then had the Speedmaster Mark II, which is a very important distinction. I would have been surprised if it was the Mark I, But the Mark II makes perfect sense. You are very, very consistent through your life. Now, I'm curious, in a linear fashion, what is the third watch that can tell me the story of Fabrizio's life?
It's another Japanese watch. It's a watch of my childhood. And it's one of the first Casio G-Shock.
Ooh.
Unfortunately, I don't have any more the watch, but it was one of the first series, so with the screw-in back case. And I bought a few years ago during one of my during one of my trip in Japan, the new edition of this watch, and it's the W5 series. And it's a watch of my childhood because when I was a kid, the G-Shock was amazing, and a lot of people wear the G-Shock. It's a black case made in rubber. Is
indestructible.
Absolutely impossible to destroy. And for kids, I was in love for watches since my childhood, and I was in love from the beginning of let me say, that my career started when I was 5 years old.
Wow.
And I start to look at the object and I start to imagine the evolution of some object, making sketches. The reaction to the G-Shock was, wow, what is that? Again, a watch that doesn't look like common watches. This is something that I discovered during this discussion. The Mark II, the Seiko 5 in the 70s, and the G-Shock is 3 watches that are not common watches. And it was a bit the big novelties during my childhood, these kind of watches.
Fabrizio, you are one of the most respected watch designers in the world, alive right now. What is it for someone listening who's like, G-Shock, but this is just a basic watch? Where is the artistry in a G-Shock?
The most important things as an industrial designer is the idea behind the object. And the idea to have something that is absolutely protect, with the rubber strap, with the rubber bezel, with the rubber case. It was a brand new concept. And this was something that it was very attractive for me. Not the shape, not the movement, not the, let me say, the savoir-faire. I was so young, but was the design and the shape. And this was the idea behind the object. Full integrated case, full integrated design. So as an industrial designer, often the most important things is the question behind the object. Why this kind of object? And could be the same question for a chair, for a train, for a watch, for a car, for a lamp, for a ballpoint pen. Why I have to use this object? And the experience was totally different. That's why I was in love for the G-Shock, because it was the beginning of a journey. It was a bit wired at the beginning, this black rubber watch, what I have to do. But it was very well designed and the idea was for me very interesting. I always in love for the idea before the products. If I'm not in love for the idea and the concept behind the product, I'm not interested at all in the product. Because the story behind the product for me is more important than the product itself. As a designer, if you have nothing to say, why I have to buy just another chair because I like it, okay, but why this chair has this shape? Why I have to wear a watch like an Octo Finissimo or other watches? And for me, was never a question about the price or the positioning, the segment of the product. If I'm in love with the watch, if I'm in love with the product, I take it. Otherwise, you can tell me the story for 2 hours. It's not for me.
I have memories of a Swatch when I was young. And what I remember is what it was like to bite. Because there's something, I was young. It's a weird thing. And also the smell. Tell me about your physical memories of the G-Shock.
I remember very well the feedback of the push button, super well integrated. And I used to touch the object because when I touch the object, I have a sort of 3-dimensional memories in my mind. And I'm able to make sketches about this kind of memories.
Remember the way they were protected with that ridge that went around the whole button?
Yeah. And honestly, I spent, I think, I don't remember how many times to disassembling a G-Shock.
You did?
Yes, because I have to dismounting an object to understand what we have under the skin. At the beginning, I looking for a screwdriver able to disassembling the G-Shock, because I have to see what's happened under the rubber skin. And that was a bit disappointing because the shape was very simple, but it was a surprise. Still today, when I buy a G-Shock, I used to disassemble. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And can you get them back together better?
Yeah. Yes. Now I'm able to do it.
This has come onto an interesting conversation. On our podcast about effing time, we did an episode about integrated watches and integrated bracelets, and how 3 out of the 3 most desirable watches are integrated bracelet watches. And you've just said something very interesting about the nature of integrated watch design, which is that as an industrial designer, you have control over everything, and it forms a complementary, holistic whole. What is your theory about why integrated bracelet watches are often considered the most beautiful, the most desirable?
So it's a very difficult question, because the beauty is a matter of opinion. Something that is beauty for you, for the other could be not interesting. There is 2 kind of design school. You could be able to integrate different function, or you could be able to separate function to have more focus on different functions. Honestly, I love both. As you can see in the Bulgari design, we don't like at all to integrate in a very clean way functions. If you look at the first Bulgari watch was a bracelet with a not very well integrated design for the case, but this was the DNA of the watch. It was a choice. Even because a lot of watches in the 70s was very well integrated, the bracelet and the case, Gianni Bulgari decided to not integrate it at all. It was part of the 70s design for watches. It was the most innovative parts of the 70s, of the watch design in the 70s. And we have to pay tribute to the Gerald Genta, because for me is the real signature of this designer. The very unique way to integrate bracelet and case for the first time. We can talk about the octagonal shape, but for me, as an industrial designer, the octagonal shape is a decorative part of his design, but the very well way to integrate case and bracelet, it was the hard core of his creative part. For me, the case still today is one of the most important parts of the watch design. The bracelet is another job because it's very difficult to do, but the criteria behind the design case and design a bracelet are totally different, because the case must be fixed on the wrist and the bracelet must be very comfortable on the wrist. So as you can see, are the opposite. And if we talk about the same languages for case and bracelet, maybe as a designer we can make some mistakes. So 3 parts of the watch is the dial is very important because it's the face. Let me say the case could be the character of the watch, and the bracelet is the comfort side of the watch. I love integrated watches, and I love not integrated watches in the same way. As a designer, you have to put attention on the different functionality, on the different part of the object in the same way. And you have to look the things in a very curious approach. Could be interesting to have an integrated bracelet, yes, but maybe this is not the right product to do. Which kind of client we have in front of us, which kind of story I want to tell you, why the brand have to tell you this kind of story instead of another one. A lot of different questions behind an object and behind the design process. If you don't make the right question, you make the wrong object.
Fabrizio, I'm going to come clean with our audience here, because I want to demonstrate to them how true this is about your character. And it's not a happy story for me. Mm. We have embarked on a couple of times creating something together, but we haven't got to the story yet.
Yeah.
So this is very true. You know, it's easy to say these things, we have these standards for the storytelling, and if the story doesn't grab me, then the watch doesn't happen. I haven't told you a story that's grabbed you yet, and the watch hasn't happened. So,
no, it's we love to make things with guests, with friends, with partners, with I don't know how collaborators. But we have to find something that makes sense for both. Otherwise, it's just another products. And now I'm not talking about specifically in a watch. We receive a lot of requests to make collaborations, and we receive a lot of requests to make something together. But I always use the same question: why? Tell me the story that we have behind. Is it a marketing opportunity? Is it just to sell more watches? Which kind of message we have behind? And sometimes it's easier, and sometimes it's not so easy at all. So it's not the first time that we have this kind of, let me say, constraint. I have to say that maybe after all this evolution of the Octo Finissimo, we are a different company. If I remember when I joined the company in 2001, and I imagine now it's a totally different brand. We are less opportunistic, and we want to be in the future even less opportunistic. We want to take care about our client, our consistency, and we want to follow our idea. We are not a common watchmaking brand. First of all, we are a jeweler able to make very unique and fantastic timepieces. This is part of my job. But as I said before, we have to find the right story, and we have to put the right question before. It's very difficult for us today. We put just another watch. We love the project that we can put together, we can make together, but we have to find. When you have to make on the market a watch, you need the right moment with the right idea, with the right execution at the right time. If you miss one of these points, could be a great success, and you put a lot of effort behind, and we put a lot of effort on each kind of watches that we produce for our clients.
Sometimes as a listener, you think, oh, here we go, another brand saying they have standards for these collaborations, and yet there are so many in there. But I can tell you right now, I am one of the people that is putting my hand up to work with you, and I am not daunted. I am not discouraged. I'm going to keep coming at you and the ideas will get better and better.
Yeah, for sure. We know each other since many years now, so we don't have this kind of issue.
No, and the conversation will continue. But now, dear listener, you are part of that conversation, and you can ask me for updates. But now, look, we have had 3 non-Bulgari watches, which I have to say, thank you for the honesty. Thank you for the candor in looking back at your life and the watches that have left an impact. I want to pick up on that point about 2001. I joined the Bulgari story about halfway through your career in around 2010, 2011. And at that point, the brief to me at Time+Tide was very clear. We need to establish legitimacy in Swiss watchmaking and in fine watchmaking, when we need to overcome the perception, the stigma that we are jewelry first and watches in an opportunistic way. So in the early days in Ginza, this was not achieved. This was a long way from achieved. We had an Octo that was thick, attractive, and I wore one on the plane from Melbourne to Ginza at a blue dial Octo. It was a lovely watch, sculptural, masculine, but thick and heavy. And at that point, I would say, if we talk about 1 to 10, we were at about a 3 or a 4, I would say. So I'm guessing, and you could tell me I'm wrong, but is your next watch a part of what took Bulgari from that point to where we are today?
Allora, we talk from the beginning 5 watches. I already talked about 3 watches, but I have to ask you, we could have 6 watches because...
Well, no. You're pretty tough on me, so okay. I could say no.
We can stay on 5, so no problem. The first watch is one of the most important in my career as a watch designer, as an industrial designer. I spent more than 20 years in Bulgari. Is the Serpenti Tubogas, because the brief initially was to redesign the Bulgari Tubogas. And after 6 months, several meetings with a lot of trials and prototypes, we discovered that it was impossible to make a better watch than the Bulgari Tubogas that already was on the market.
Can you describe that watch and contrast it to the Serpenti Turbogas, just for people who don't know?
Bvlgari Turbogas, it's one of our most important icon. It's a round-shaped watch designed by Gianni Bulgari with the double logo, with this Turbogas bracelet that it was not integrated at all. This is another Bulgari signature. And it was, for the first time, one of the common watches after the decades of Serpenti that you can use every day with a jewelry touch. It's difficult, still today it's difficult to say that we are talking about a timepiece or a jewelry piece. But it's absolutely the Bulgari DNA. So after 6 months, we say, guys, honestly, we have nothing on the table. We have to be honest. You have to be humble enough to say, I'm not able to make something better than something that we already had. The Bvlgari Turbogas is almost a perfect watch. Round shape with this a very strong identity, very iconic dial with just 12 and 6, black face with gold indexes, and this amazing bracelet that we talk again about bracelet is very unique. Guys, we have to be humble, we have to be honest. We have nothing on the table. It's not possible to make a watch better than the watch that we already have. Why don't we try with the Serpenti? This was my sentence. This was my question. Before the Serpenti Turbogas, the Serpenti for Bulgari was just super high-end watches, secret watches, few references per year, a lot of special requests. It was not accessible at all for common clients. The Bvlgari Turbogas was very accessible. So the idea was to create the link between the most iconic watch of our lineup, that was the Serpenti, but it was just the pinnacle of our assortment, and the entry, the opportunity to wear a Turbogas Serpenti every day. This was something that was totally unexpected. I turned the page of the agenda of the product meeting and I start to make sketches and I start to say, I would love to have a Serpenti head without the eyes, without the cover, something that is more common as a drop shape, very feminine, with a very integrated bracelet this time. Without any...
Do you want to draw now?
I can draw if you want. With just one hand, it could be not so easy. But the idea was to have a drop shape case with a very well integrated Turbogas and with a new tail for the Turbogas. So this was the idea with the Roman numbers for one of the first time on our lineup, and this kind of bracelet. It was the first sketch was almost like that, and they say, try, Fabrizio, and we will see what's happened. We had another meeting the month after, and we say, okay, go ahead with the production. It was in 2009, and in 2010 the watch was on the market, and it was a huge success. The brand, thanks to the Serpenti Turbogas, rediscover the Serpenti, the powerful design of Serpenti. And different business units start to work on the Serpenti, and now is the first, today is the biggest franchise that we have, the biggest lineup that we have in our brand.
Can you give me a little bit of context on that? Because being a man and being more interested in the Finissimo and that resonating more with me over the years, I would just assume the Finissimo is at the same level. But how much bigger is the Serpenti in terms of sales and size to the Finissimo?
When we talk about Serpenti, we talk about the jewelry business unit, accessory business unit, watches business unit. So the jewelry business unit still today, I can say that is the core of our brand. And for sure, now Serpenti is in a huge collection in terms of jewelry, high jewelry pieces, high jewelry watches, medium high jewelry. We have a lot of Spiga, we have a lot of Viper bracelet. So in watches, just in the watches business unit, we have more or less 10 different ways to wear a Serpenti watch.
So it's not easy to compare them. It's a single category versus...
It's just one category for us. Finissimo, it's our baby. We produce the most strategic movement, 90% of the movement in-house. We produce all the things that we are able to produce about this watch in-house. So the facility that we have in Les Sentiers, in Saint-Léger, you cannot compare with the facility that we have in Valencia, in Roma, for the high jewelry watches. So is a different business. We are still today, we are a jewel maker. So the Serpenti, it's an important collection for the brand.
It's a platform.
It's a platform, yeah. And I love to play with Serpenti each time in a different way. And as the Serpenti changes his own skin, I love to change the way to wear the Serpenti for our client. But still today, the tubogas, the way that the Serpenti has to wrap your wrist is absolutely unique in the watch and jewelry universe. You cannot make comparison. You don't have another watch like the Serpenti.
Has there ever been a
tubogas.
watch that wraps your wrist like that in history?
I think a lot of bracelet from the Egyptians, from the Romans, from the Etrusci, from a lot of different. Serpenti is a very iconic symbol, not just for Bulgari, but in the history of the human being. You can see Cleopatra with Serpenti. You can see a lot of Romans. Ladies with the Serpenti watch, even if they don't use the head, you have the Serpenti body on the wrist.
Yes.
So it's this way to wear the jewel that make the jewel unique. And as a designer, you have to take care about this part. How can I describe and how I can design and draw an emotion? The way that you have to put the Serpenti watch on the wrist is unique. And
I still don't quite know how to do it, by the way.
The technical part, the way to integrate, the functional part of my job in a certain moment during one of the execution of the Serpenti start to come out. I say, okay, we have the Serpenti Tubogas, we have the Serpenti Scaglie, we have the Serpenti Secret Watch, but maybe I would love to have a Serpenti that is more a watch than a jewel. And we make several prototypes, and I received just one comment that is still in my memory. And the lady say, Fabrizio, the watch is beautiful, but it's not sexy at all.
Mm.
That's it. But it's more comfortable than the Tubogas. Yes, but I don't care. It's not sexy and feminine at all. So this is the worst comment that I received in my life, but was still today in my memory, and I never forget something like that. The mistake was to try to give a functionality to a piece of jewelry.
So what did you do to change the Serpenti to be sexy?
Today we have a lot of different clients that love to wear Serpenti in a different way. Must be feminine. Must be something that talk about our jewelry heritage in a very clear and simple way, and must be easy to wear. If you start to think about something, yes, but you can use the hand in this way, you can turn the bracelet on this way on the wrist, nobody cares. The clients has a different life. They are not involved in the watches every day. They want to use an object just to the pleasure to use an object. They don't want to be in the development process, and they don't want to add you to explore new ideas. They just want to wear something that make an emotion for.
So I want to get this part straight. Was this an early design that was not sexy? And this design did not make it to production? And I want to know what was wrong. Like, you were trying to be too functional.
The first question was wrong. Why I have to use a Serpenti that instead to be sexy is be functional?
I see. So it became just sexy.
As a designer, this is very important for young designers, for all the people involved in creative process. You have to put the right questions, and you have to ask, first of all, to you, why I need this kind of object, why I'm drawing this kind of object, who have to use it, why they have to use it.
When do they use it?
Exactly. Which kind of way they have to use, they have to put the watch on which kind of way on the wrist. Sometimes as a designer, we start to think about our creativity, our way to make sketches, and maybe the clients doesn't care about this kind of things. They just to be passionate at the end.
I have a great example for you. I'm wearing the Bulgari aluminium today. And only as I landed in Geneva and I was walking through the hallway towards passport control, very dark in the hallway, I looked down at my watch. It was 9:15. I had no idea what the time was. because the legibility on this watch is terrible.
Because you have the black dial.
The very worst legibility of any watch I own. But I have owned this watch for, I think, 3 or 4 years since it was released. It has my name engraved on the back because I love it. But it took me 4 years to realize that it stinks for legibility. That's because I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
The functionality of the watch, is it tough? Is it light? Is it comfortable? Is it stylish? Yeah. Is it perfect for summer? Does the rubber withstand a barbecue, a swim? All these tick, 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 tick. The last thing I care about is, can it tell me?
Yeah, because today we use a watch to talk something about us. We don't need a watch. We have our mobile phone. We need a lot of electronic device can tell you the time. But we use watch because we love watches and because can tell you something about you to the others. I take your point. Thank you for this comment. You are wearing the aluminum with the blue dial with the blue hands, just
black
with
and
the
black.
Yes, just with the white Luminova tips on the. Yeah.
But as you see now, it truly disappears. The hands, because the tip actually ends up integrating with the indices.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. This is something that happens even to me. When I joined the company, I remember very well my sketches and my drawings. At the time, Francesco Trapani said, Fabrizio, please make the indexes bigger because I cannot read it at all. But I was very young and I say, but Francesco, I can read it very well. Now I make exactly the same comment to my designer. Please make bigger indexes and bigger hands because I'm not able to read the time. But it's my fault now. It's my problem. But I totally agree. The aluminum watch is a very unique watch in terms of color scheme, materials. It's absolutely unique. You can recognize for 10 meters, 20 meters far, and the black dial for sure, the super.
The jointed strap is a giveaway.
Yes, the integrated bracelet in this way, very unique way to integrate the bracelet with these very unique links. It's stunning. We try to make a bigger hands for you, maybe, because you are getting old like me.
Stop. The other thing I'll say about this is the most unisex. Yeah. This is the most worn by my wife watch. She steals it all the time because it's just so design-led, and I think that the jointed strap makes it feel really comfortable for anyone that wears it. It's a ripper. But my point was there simply that you're absolutely right because I don't care about the functionality. Yeah. I don't care. Even when it comes to the basic purpose of the watch, I don't care.
In the past, the watch was a tool. In some very, very tough works in the past, the watch can save your life.
I'm not a pilot. I don't need the legibility.
Now it's a totally different. Now it's a totally different world. And still today, I have my Finissimo on the wrist every day, and I look at the watch, but I never read the time.
Yeah, and you almost would struggle to see it because you are wearing the all steel.
Exactly, and watch. I passed from the old titanium watch to the old steel watch. The monochrome approach for me is the one of the most incredible signature of the Octo Finissimo, and this is my 5th watch, for sure. After the great success of the Serpenti to Bogasche, changed a bit the face of the company. The
5th watch,
the Finissimo watch, is another milestones in our history, maybe the biggest one, because the Serpenti is an ongoing history, is a part of our DNA. You can expect that we are working on the Serpenti to Bogasche or on the Turbo Gas, on the Serpenti
It's aesthetics. A story that existed before.
Yes, exactly. But we were able to create something from scratch, to write down a new chapter. And this chapter is very important for us because changed completely the perception about the brand to our clients. And we have a lot of new clients that before the Octo Finissimo, again, if I love the watch, I start to be interested in the story of the brand and why. But if I'm not interested in the product, I'm not interested in the brand. But with the Octo Finissimo, we change completely our mindset.
Mm-hmm. And I think I was a very harsh marker because I said that when I joined the Bulgari watchmaking story, I think you were at a 3 out of 10 in terms of your mission.
Yeah.
And how far do you think the Finissimo got your number? Do you think you got to a 10?
Honestly, I don't know. It's difficult for me to reply to this question. Because I think that we were looking for our path. Bulgari is a jewel maker that make even fantastic timepieces, but what's going on? We are Italian, we have a different style, we have a different way to wear a watch. Even it was the first very important economical crisis in the world. The people they doesn't want to show at all the big watches on the wrist. As a designer, you have to be able to catch the moment, the right environment, the right economical situation. Designer is a very difficult job because it's not just one job. You have to catch the hidden needs of the market. You have to be able to anticipate in the next 4 or 5 years what's going on. So the economical situation for a designer is very important because change completely the taste. Change your behavior, change your way to express yourself. It's difficult to talk about an iconic pieces if you are not talking about the environment behind the watches, behind the, I don't know, the Porsche 911 or all the iconic objects that we have in the contemporary museum.
I really do consider that it went from 3 to 10 because within the space of 10 years, I'm on the plane in 2012, going to Ginza, 2013, whatever it was, and Bulgari was nowhere. Really. You had the Octo Original. There were many virtues of this watch, but Bulgari was not in the conversation. Yeah. It was in the fashion fringe, where, say, Louis Vuitton is now trying to break into legitimacy. It was right on the edges. But then I feel, because we must talk about, it's not just the product, it was the strategy around the 7 world records breaking continuously. Because this would have been, did you decide together that number?
It was honestly... We say we have to try. We discovered this amazing know-how in our facilities. Could be an opportunity to make a modern ultra-thin watches, and we have to try. It was unexpected, but the first Finissimo was different from the Finissimo, the automatic one, for example, that for me is the real milestones in terms of aesthetics. It was a gold watch with a manual winding tourbillon, 30 pieces, just for 30 clients. The second one was the minute repeater for the first time in titanium, but other 30 clients. But the first milestone was the automatic one. Nobody can expect
that's when Bulgari, the excitement dropped, 100%.
Nobody can expect that Bulgari were able to make this kind of complexity for an ongoing production. And we start to imagine the evolution of the watch, I think, starting from this moment. Yes, the world record was something that we had in mind to say, hey, look at me. I'm a part of the game. We were obliged to make something totally unexpected. When you make, for this kind of brand, when you make common things, nobody cares. Because they already have, let me say, common Swiss-making watches. When you make something totally disruptive, out of the box, this is our DNA, everybody look at you. So, but in a very humble way, even if we talk about world record, we say we have to try. There is nothing like that on the market. The ultra-thin watches today is a vintage market. Always the same watch with a very conventional shape, very Swiss watchmaking shape, round shape, thin bezel, white face. We can play with titanium, we can integrate a bracelet, we can make a contemporary sport ultra-thin watch with the Italian touch, so you can hide under your shirt. You are not able to show every time your power through the watch. This is very subtle. This is very Italian. This is very chic. Chic, it's like beauty. Something that is chic for you is not chic for me. Something that is elegant for you is not elegant for me. But the true elegance is to be in the right moment, in the right way. It's not matter of jackets, of the perfect cut of your pants or the beauty of your shirt. Is an attitude. You can be, your dress could be awful, but you are anyway elegant.
It's
and
the
this
way
is
you
the
wear
most, in Italy we call this kind of things sprezzatura. It's a very difficult concept to explain in English for me. But I love to say that the Octo Finissimo could be the sprezzatura in the watchmaking industry because it looks something very easy, but it was 5 years of development of a lot of people and looks very natural.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the third party that you worked with on the movement development for the Finissimo, because it's one thing to have this concept. Part of the reason it doesn't exist is it's very hard to achieve this, and from an engineering perspective, from a robustness perspective, from a practicality perspective. You worked with the movement manufacturer, was it Concepto? Is that the name of the...
No, we discover this kind of skills inside our manufacturing site. We discovered the ability of our watchmasters to make ultra-thin watches with some very difficult complication like the minute repeater. We decided to go in this kind of segment, and we were not able to produce and develop all the idea around the Finissimo movement that we had in mind, due to the capacity and the number of people in the product development process. So we start to imagine an hour, minute, and second with the manual winding. We start to imagine the automatic one. We already had the minute repeater. And we start to say we need maybe a very well-known complication. It was the tourbillon. So guys, we are not able to produce and to develop these 5 references in-house, so we need a partner. And we start to use a partner, but when we use a partner like Concepto, we develop the watch. We have the idea, and we found a partner able to develop the idea with us. And it was the same for the Octo Finissimo Ultra. We were not able, because we had a lot of things to do, the last one was the Piccolissimo, to develop even the Ultra in-house. So we go to Concepto and we say we would love to have this kind of watch. And we start to discuss about even the aesthetics. And the first meeting was a bit, let me say, a common ultra-thin watch. Now we can say a common after more than 10 years of Finissimo. And I say, okay, we don't need this. We already have. You have to put this element here, this element here. You have to completely destroy the shape. You don't have to take care about the octagonal jail. This is my job, but I would love to have this kind of function put in this way. So as you can see, we don't buy a movement, we develop a movement, we have the idea, and we find the right partner able to develop together the idea that we already have. Piccolissimo, we design, we develop, and we produce in-house. The perpetual calendar is the same. The automatic one is the same. The previous one was the manual winding is the same. The skeleton is produced in-house. The 8 days is produced in-house. So we love to have in-house the most strategic movements that we can use even for other complications. But when we need something that go outside the common, let me say, production of common complication, we need someone that help us to develop and produce for sure.
Fabrizio, I have one last question. Success changes people.
Success changes people, yeah.
It does. And the Finissimo has been wildly successful. So I just want you as a last point here, how has the success of this watch changed you personally?
I think that success changes the people and could be very dangerous because you lose the contact with the ground, you lose the contact with the client and with the people around you. And it's something that honestly I don't like at all. I spend all the day of my work life in the same office, making the same sketches with the same people. I'm very happy about the success of the Octo Finissimo. I'm very happy about the success of the Serpenti, but it's not my success, it's the brand success. I can make some sketches, but without the people behind me, without the people involved in the marketing team, in the product development process, in the manufacturing side, it's just a sketch. It's not a success. So could be very dangerous. Because you have a lot of exposure, you have a lot of people that want to talk with you. You make podcasts, you make videos, you make a lot of clients ask me to sign the packaging of the watch. But for me, honestly, it's something why they need my signature. Honestly, no, it doesn't change my life.
I've known you for a decade, Fabrizio, and I can say safely that you are the same person, almost exactly. The same energy, the same smile, the same... you have a nice warmth about you, but also there is something very steely and uncompromising about the way you see the world that I find very reassuring. I say that character is rare, and I feel very privileged to have spent so much time with you. And then today, this conversation adds to our story. I thank you very much for the honesty, the storytelling, And I look forward to adding more chapters in the future.
Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure.
If there are young designers listening to this, listen to this again and again, because there's a lot of secrets in here. There are a lot of Easter eggs, we call them. And I think that you will benefit from some wonderful lessons and stories in here from Fabrizio.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodness me, this is a true put the kettle on please moment, because I don't want to break the spell of this interview. I want to stare into space while the kettle boils. I want to stir my oat milk into my Earl Grey tea. I want to squeeze a little honey in there, and I want to sit in a comfortable chair with a nice vista outside the window and just reflect on all that was discussed. And I do mean that last point sincerely. If you are a student of design, if you are intending to have a life of design, then you could do a lot worse than to listen to this life story and these various game-changing moments and decisions and breakthroughs that Fabrizio has had, and really ponder them, because this is a man who has had a decade of intentional design and intentional design strategy, and it has made the world of difference to Bulgari. Thank you, Fabrizio, for your time. Thank you, Chiara, for organising that interview. And thank you, always, to my audio engineer, Darren, for making it sound so damn silky. I will see you on the next episode. Until then, stay safe and live stylishly.